What's good in the hood, YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here bringing another video. Today I'm bringing a video on Uchuu Sentai Kyuranger episode 19. This episode was pretty cool. It talked about a bunch of different things and it brought the Kyurangers pretty close to getting Argo. Unfortunately, when it came to getting the Karana Kyotama, which is the last Kyotama that they needed to get Argo, things didn't go as well as they hoped. But we'll get into that in this review. So the episode is called The Spirit of the Forest Planet Keel, and the episode starts off with us seeing Stinger on the bench where he was sitting, waiting patiently for Champ to get better. And we also see Champ is still being worked on. Eventually, though, we do see Stinger decides to put down the Oishi Kyotama, which is Champ's Kyotama, on the bench and decides to put on his cloak and leave. At that point, he disappears and goes on Sasori Voyager, and we're left to wonder, where is he going? We assume most likely to Scorpio, but we don't know for sure. So what ends up happening then is that we end up seeing the Kyurangers on the Orion, and they know that they have to find the last Kyotama to create Argo. Argo is obviously the ship that they need to protect the universe, and on top of that, apparently a lot of consumerism, enough to destroy the Earth, are outside of the Earth's atmosphere, and in order to protect the Earth, they have to go and find the last Kyotama. That is what show says, because originally they planned on just going and attacking. Thing is, they're not strong enough as is. They need Argo. So that is important. But that then leads to the question of, well, where do they go to get the Karana Kyotama? They have two already, the Vela and the Vela and the I'm forgetting the other one right now. I believe it's the Pixis, Pixis Kyotama. And so what they end up using is they use the Pixis Kyotama to actually, I could be wrong, they use the Pixis Kyotama to end up finding the Karana Kyotama, which is located on planet Keel. So at that point, they have to go down to that planet to go check it out. When they go there, they end up having, what happens is that they split up. And the team that actually goes down, they don't do the Kyotama dance that they typically do. It just goes right into it. As far as what is the team, it's Naga, Balance, Hammy, Spada, and Lucky. Naga and Balance go on their own into the forest and actually get captured. But being that we'll learn more about not too much longer into the episode, a little bit longer into the episode, we'll see. So that's important. But yeah, they get captured. In the meantime, Spada, Lucky, and Hammy end up going more towards where the main part of the planet is, where the people are. And they're being worked by a Magistrate known as Omega. Omega has like a statue-like face, and his facial presence is being made into a monument into one of the walls within the land. And so the thing is that the three Kyurangers that are there end up fighting Omega, and actually, Hammy even chips away a bunch of the stone portion of the Magistrate. And what's great about this is also, it's not a Magistrate that's just the typical ones that we see all the time. It's one of the unique ones for once, which is great when we see the ones that aren't just the same thing, just maybe slightly redone, or just has a different name. That's great. As far as other things go, they end up fighting, and eventually the Magistrate does disappear, and what ends up happening is that we end up seeing a conversation with we end up seeing a conversation with Kotaro speaking to Sho, and Kotaro mentions how Stinger ended up leaving, and Kotaro is worried about what must have happened. He also informs Sho that apparently Champa's still not in good enough condition to fight and get back online, and he's still being worked out, but there's definitely progress being made. It's still going to take some time. Unfortunate, but honest. So that ends up happening. Following this, though, we end up seeing Spada, Hammy, and Lucky speaking to the villagers, and they ask about anything that looks like a Kyotama on the island. And the village elder ends up speaking to them about a treasure that was spoken of in lore for centuries, that had been told in stories about how it was somewhere located in the main part of the forest. But they were warned afterwards that they shouldn't go there because they might find trouble and they might be in danger if they go there. So even though they hear that, by the time that the village elder has finished saying what he says, the Kyurangers have left. They don't really care. So at that point, because they're used to this kind of stuff. So anyway, they end up going to the main part of the village, where that was where Balance and Naga are, and they notice that they're hanging from some vines. They're like, "What are you guys doing?" And the thing is that, in reality, we know that someone attacked them. At that point, they're also attacked. Thing is that Hammy, in this case, was very smart, because the Kyurangers must have thought in advance, because they decided to have Hammy go invisible, so that in case there was someone that was going to ambush them, she could hide and surprise attack whoever the enemy is that would attack them. So this allowed her to, help her friends and get them into a position where they could talk to whoever it was that lived in the forest that would attack them, or whatever it is that would attack them. In this case, it was a person, and it was someone that actually had lived there for hundreds of years, which was the planet Guardian, Eris. Eris is meant to guard the Kurana Kyotama, which she does have. She has it actually in her staff, and she guards it there. So what ends up happening is that Eris ends up talking about how, she cannot give it to just anyone. She was told by someone hundreds of years ago to protect the Kurana Kyotama, and that one day some saviors would come by and request it. And the thing is that at first she initially has a crush on Spada, just cause. But eventually she ends up talking to them, and they ask about, they mention how they are saviors, and about how the fact that they do have the other Kyotama that they are looking, that go with the Kurana Kyotama. And she asks, "Do you have it with you?" And they say no. So she, of course, is a little bit hesitant and a little bit uncomfortable with this whole entire idea, and is skeptical about the truth. Thing is that we then end up seeing a conversation as well from Scorpio. And Scorpio, he ends up talking to Don Armage, mentioning how he knows of Argo. And the thing is that Don Armage says, so you know of Argo? And he mentions, well, why don't we go after it? He says, that's something that's that you should not worry about. And so clearly Don Armage has some knowledge, but is not willing to share things, which is interesting to note. Not very clear as to what that implies, as to why he wouldn't talk to him about it if he were someone that was so high in power, Scorpio. But that again, it could just be that maybe Don Armage knows that Scorpio isn't as good as he comes across Don Armage doesn't come as nice to Scorpio as he thinks, and in both senses, maybe Don Armage knows that Scorpio isn't really on his side in the end. We'll have to wait and see. I don't know for a fact. That could just be me making a guess, but I'm sure that might be something, because why else would he not try to tell someone that he knows so well this information, other than the fact that maybe he's a little worried that since Scorpio knows of it, then maybe he might attack him. We'll get to things though. Eventually, though, we end up hearing that Medako is going to stay on Earth and watch over the planet. And in the meantime, Scorpio goes down to planet Keel and confronts the Kyurangers and Eris. Eris ends up getting attacked, and we also end up seeing Omega appear. And the thing is that Eris ends up having to, like, the Kyurangers end up fighting Omega and Scorpio, but eventually Scorpio decides to ask about, like, why are you fighting me? And it's like, and they mention how they're trying to fight Scorpio for the reasons of, getting revenge for their friend. And he says, why would you do such a thing? That's not worth your time. And, he basically treats it like it's nothing, and that your friends are meant to be used for you to gain things rather than for, to help each other. It's meant to take advantage. The whole purpose of a friend is to take advantage of them, which is obviously not true. But that's what he kind of comes across as, and he ends up using this Magistrate, which is on the side dark matter, which means it's sort of like he's a friend in a way. He ends up using his scorpion tail to sting into Omega and instructs him to go and kill the people of planet Keel. So at that point, what happens is Lucky ends up telling the other Kyurangers to go and protect the planet from Omega and keep them alive. Thing is that Eris is like, why would you let them go after this enemy? Why would you not just keep on fighting? And he mentions how we're saviors. That's not our thing. We want to save people. Sure, our Kyotamo is important to us, but at the same time we care. They're part of the universe too, and we care about them. And we don't want them to be lost just because we're trying to do our own thing. So at that point, what ends up happening is that, and also what happens is that Lucky says that and also I can deal with Scorpio. There shouldn't be any issue. So he ends up fighting. He ends up using the solar mode for to use the Sun Leo red form, which he ends up doing pretty well in combat. But eventually, at one point or another, what ends up happening is that Lucky does have the Chromatic Kyotama, but soon enough, Scorpio decides to grab onto Eris. In the meantime, I forgot to also just mention this small point, which is that Stinger does appear on the Orion before Garu and Raptor. Thing is that Stinger ends up taking the two Kyotama that they already had to form Argo and stealing it, and then also poisons Garu and Raptor, and leaves behind his vest and outfit and his Kyotama. So he doesn't have either of those, and Sho knows that was Stinger. So that ends up happening. But back to what I was saying with the fight. Lucky ends up having to choose between giving up the Chromatic Kyotama and letting Eris die. He ends up saving Eris and giving the Kyotama up because, he is a savior. But Eris finds, like, why would you do such a thing? You could have had the Kyotama. I've been protecting it for this long. Why would you just let me die and be done with it? And he says, you're part of the universe too, and I'm not just gonna abandon you. And it's important. So, that's really great. So at that point, obviously, they don't have their Kyotama that they need. And at the same time, without the others knowing, like, basically neither of them know that all the Kyotama are out of their possession. The only people that have it are Stinger and Scorpio right now, which is not good. But we'll see. But of course, we know something's going to happen later on, as far as, like, they'll get Argo at some point, but this is still bad. So eventually what ends up happening, though, is that, Eris tries to make, Lucky tries to make Eris feel better about it, and Eris sees Orion in him. Now you may be wondering, who is Orion? Orion, as you may remember, is the name of the ship that that's their base. But Orion was one of the original, if not the original, Kyurangers from the past. And she sees Lucky in Orion. So what ends up happening is that she lets him go, and he goes to fight Omega. They end up doing battle with Omega by like first destroying him, and then he turns big. At that point, the Kyurangers form Kurino, which Lucky summons, and at that point, Lucky actually uses the solar mode inside Kurino, which actually leads to Naga and Balance having a sense of like intense energy, which causes them to do these crazy fast kicks against Omega in his giant form, and at that point Omega does get destroyed. So then we end up hearing a conversation between Sho and Lucky, and Sho mentions how Stinger left and took the two Kyotama that they need for Argo, and that Stinger thinks that, and that Scorpio, not Scorpio, Sho thinks that Stinger is going to go after Scorpio, and that they need to go after Stinger now and make sure that he doesn't do anything bad. So, and at the same time, they end up learning that, Sho ends up learning that the current Kyotama was also taken by Scorpio in this case, which basically means they don't have any Kyotama that they need right now. So they have to go really bad to go and try to retrieve the Kyotama that they're missing. What ends up happening is we end up seeing a continued clip where we end up seeing that Stinger finds out. Madako tells Scorpio that he has a guess, which is Stinger, and Stinger has come with the two Kyotama that he's looking for. So at that point, what ends up happening is that Stinger and Scorpio confront each other, and Stinger mentions how he wants to believe that Scorpio will truly work with him and protect the world and save it, And the thing is that at first when he tries to give up the Kyotama, Stinger does it without much hesitation, but as Scorpio's about to grab it, Stinger ends up shooting out his tail and whacking him away at that, and he says, I just can't stand how you are for one more second, and they end up beginning to attack each other. That's basically where the episode ends. Bunch of stuff, obviously, losing Kyotama that they kind of need, but at the same time, a lot of important story developments, and the next episode is going to be really cool because that one is supposed to be called Stinger versus Scorpio, which obviously means we're going to get a real battle going between the two of them. It's also interesting if you've seen the preview, because what ends up occurring in the preview is that we see that Kotaro ends up having to fight Stinger at one point, and he doesn't really want to. He looks at Stinger as someone that's more of a role model for him, because he wants Stinger, and he wants himself to become someone that can be looked up to and be praised, rather than someone that has fallen to being someone that's not so great, and so it's all about how people see him. But it's really interesting, and we're gonna see a big battle. It also looks like Stinger ends up getting some crazy marks all over his face, and people, I'm sure plenty of people have made this correlation, but it's almost like, in some ways, like Sasuke and Itachi from Naruto. If you ever watched Naruto, very similar in a way. I'm just really curious about what they're going to do in episode 20, because it looks really cool. I don't think we're getting Argo next episode for sure. I know we're going to be getting it in the next couple weeks. I believe it's supposed to be August that we're supposed to get it, but it could be sooner-ish, maybe. We'll see. I know there was recent magazine articles that actually explained what's going to happen when they get Argo, which is the fact that we are going to finally get Ho Ho Soldier, which will be really cool. And he apparently will have been resting dormant within Argo for hundreds of years. So that's pretty interesting to note that he will have been like a former warrior that had been resting there inside of Argo for hundreds of years. So that's going to be really cool to see. As far as everything else goes, not too much else. I just wanted to give you guys those kind of little bits of detail. I'm liking this a lot. I can't wait to see how episode 20 is, because 19 was pretty great. 20 could be pretty cool. And also they just started, and they'll probably be doing this for the next couple of weeks at least, advertising the Kyurangers movie. Yes, there is going to be a summer movie like there always is, and the movie exclusive Voyager is the Cerberus Voyager, which is going to be a 3-headed dog Kyotama, which is very cool. So it will be very nice to see all that, and if the movie is available online early enough, I might do a review of that as well. We'll see what happens. I don't know anything. Usually movies are a little bit harder to say, but episodes definitely. So please remember to like, comment, subscribe, tell me what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So until then, guys, I'm Crazy Samurai 71, and goodbye, guys.